overwhelmed during a painful divorce, Kimberly McCarthy discovered a life-changing truth. The way we think isn't always the truth. A simple yet powerful question: do you believe everything you think? Became the catalyst for Kimberly's journey into mindfulness, transforming her relationship with herself and the world around her. I'm Megan Babcock, and in this episode, Kimberly opens up about the moment that changed everything, the profound impact mindfulness has had on her life, and how she's using this transformative practice to help others navigate their own challenges. Thanks for coming back on this episode with me, Kim. I am really excited to have this conversation with you.
Thanks, Megan. I'm excited to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
And you guys, if you did not listen to the episode prior to this one, you should go back and hear a little bit about who Kim is, the work that she does, and it'll make a lot more sense of why we are now talking about her own journey and how mindfulness has been such a powerful tool that she has been using in her own life and with her clients and her patients. So Kim, tell me a little bit about how this question came up for you about the power of your thoughts and how we believe them sometimes to our own detriment.
Sure. So my therapist asked me that question probably about 12 years ago in a therapy session. Like you had mentioned, I was going through a really difficult time. I still look back and I think it was probably one of the most difficult times of my life. And he asked me the question, do you believe everything you think? And I'm embarrassed to say it, but I answered, yeah, why wouldn't I? It's the voice in my head. It must be true. And he encouraged me to do a little research around mindfulness. And fortunately, I was in Worcester, Massachusetts, close to UMass, where the mindfulness center is that John Kabat-Zinn started. And so I participated in an 8-week course on mindfulness, and it was life-changing. It was, I have to say, I'm still so grateful for that conversation that we had. Yeah.
It shows just how powerful one question can be. Curiosity is really powerful. Like you said, we think, oh, if I'm thinking it, it must be true. And yet, when we pause sometimes and take a closer look, we find out that maybe it's not so true. So, tell me a little bit about kind of that journey where you start asking yourself questions and what were you uncovering as to kind of the behind the scenes from the thoughts that you were believing?
Yeah, I just started to really take a step back and question a lot of the thoughts that I had about myself, the stories that I've had about myself and told myself. Um, and so, I mean, over the course of time, I realized that, just taking a step back, asking the question, is it true? Is it really true? I love the work by Byron Katie. She talks about how is this thought making you feel? Which generally speaking, it's for the most part, it's probably making us feel insecure or just not great about ourselves, and then asking how would I feel or be without this thought, and so for me, I think that just starting to question, where do we get these stories, and taking a deeper look, and I think over the course of time, that's what I did is as I really kind of through therapy and through reflection, I realized that a lot of our beliefs and our stories and our, thoughts about ourselves and the world come from childhood experiences. And I think we just need to start questioning. And it's, again, something so simple, but something so important.
So good. So when I started my journey, I think most people who know me or have listened to me know that I'm a Christian. And as I was processing this really dark place in my own life, where I think I was finally at a place of like surrender and desperation, which I think a lot of times that's where people are when they're ready and willing to try something different and hear a different perspective and quit doing the same thing over and over, expecting different results. And when I cried out to God, I heard him say, I want you to take every thought captive, which is a scripture. And I was like, oh, okay. Take every thought captive. Very similar to
Mhm.
what you have to do when where you're thinking about your thoughts and whether or not that you should believe them. And my next question was, okay, so what do I do with it when I take the thought captive? And what do I do with it? And the next thing I heard was to measure it against the fruit of the Spirit, which are love, joy, peace, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, and self control, which are all really amazing. Whether you believe in God or not, those are some pretty good things
Mhm.
to think upon, and things that inviting more of that into your life will bring about so much more joy and fulfillment. Well, as I started to explore those thoughts, one, I was like, oh my goodness, no wonder I'm so anxious and overwhelmed, because these thoughts that are coming at me are things that I would never say to anyone else.
Mhm.
They're very critical, um, very, there was no trust in myself. And so, as I started to evaluate the thought and what was it creating for me, was definitely not creating love, joy, peace, kindness, faithfulness, and self-control. So I was like, okay, what do I do when I identify this thought that is not in alignment with what I want to choose to believe, right? Because it really boils down to understanding what you're thinking and then choosing it, because those internal thoughts, even though I did not want the life I was living, that was the reality. The thoughts were becoming my life. And I, in some ways, didn't even realize it. Like I was just like this passive bystander, and the thoughts were what were creating my life. Would you say that your thoughts were creating this life, and kind of the life you were living was a reflection of those thoughts?
I would definitely agree with that. And I think that it wasn't until I started to recognize the thoughts and challenge them and choose a new thought that I really started to see a
Mm.
shift in the way I was in my relationships, the way that I was being, just the way that I was navigating challenges. I feel like mindfulness, breath work, all of it was just really transformational and helping me to move through just some difficult times. And I think if I hadn't had that ability or those skills at that point, I imagine life would look really different. And sometimes I wish, gosh, and I say this to my patients and my students, if I had had this knowledge as a teenager or as a young person, I can only imagine how different my life would have been. And it is what it is, and I'm grateful for
Mhm.
where I'm at. I probably feel the best I have in my life, and I really credit that to some of the practices that I learned through mindfulness and challenging
That's
my thinking.
Yeah, so powerful. It seems like, oh, that's so easy, but it's one of the most difficult things that we have to do for, I think, a couple reasons. One is we believe these narratives. And so challenging it is hard when you have been partnering with it and believing it, and it is part of your story. I know in my own journey, there was a lot of times that I was speaking over myself, affirmations, scriptures, things like that, and I didn't truly believe it yet. It was just a practice of, this thought does not align. I'm going to choose to speak this. And it was interesting because over time of speaking it, even though when I started, I didn't necessarily believe that truth, my mind doesn't really know all of that. So as I speak this over myself, it started to become more and more believable. My story that I was telling myself began shifting. And so I want people to know that it's not like all of a sudden you start believing a whole new story.
Hmm.
It's difficult to shift that narrative. And the other part that I think is hard, and where your mindfulness and your breathing and other skills, which I love, dialectical behavior therapy skills, because a lot of it is check the facts, opposite
Hmm.
action, like do something different. And you're kind of just breaking that pattern that you've been doing. And if you do something different, it may not be the best thing, but it will be a different thing, which allows you to expand on what's possible. But one other thing that can make it pretty difficult is our body, our nervous system. Not only, these thoughts create responses
Mhm.
in our nervous system. And so mindfulness and these skills allow you to regulate your nervous system and create a sense of safety. Did you find that that was what those skills were allowing you to kind of navigate those uncomfortable experiences so that you could walk through them?
For sure. I think, and it's interesting that you say that about the body. And I think I feel like I was living a lot of life in fight or flight.
Mhm.
And the sympathetic nervous system was constantly being triggered by my thoughts, and it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. So I do feel like you know even just in taking the breath, or again reframing the thought, or finding a distraction, I think that, yeah, we can start to create that shift in the body, and slow the heart rate down and prevent ourselves from getting into that fight or flight. And I think one thing that you said that is really important is, I feel like a lot of times, a lot of us will try something like you were talking about, your affirmations and whether or not you believe them. It's kind of like, when you do a gratitude journal and you start a gratitude practice in the beginning, you might not see the benefits or feel it, or with mindfulness or breath work. But I think we really need to stick with it and see it through, because I think at some point we do see those benefits. But I feel like a lot of times people don't give it, they don't give it the chance. So they do something a few times and then they don't feel like it's working for them, and then they throw in the towel. And I think it's consistency is so important.
Oh, that's so good. And there is so much scientific data
Hmm.
behind things like gratitude, forgiveness. And for me, I really struggled with the forgiveness piece, because it was like, if I forgive, then it's saying what you did was okay. It's not honoring me. So I was holding on to my anger and my bitterness, and like this was not justified. And I was harming myself over and over again.
Hmm.
Well, I harm myself. I'm responding. That's that whole re traumatization
Hmm.
of the event. And I'm reinforcing these beliefs. And my nervous system is responding and being reinforced as well, which makes the anxiety increase, the depression increase, your negative coping skills. And so by utilizing things like mindfulness and breath work in the beginning, it really does allow you to do some self-soothing,
Hmm.
to be able to calm the body and the mind, because we're not going to be able to continue to go through it if there's the resistance of the body. And I didn't really understand that in till a little ways into my journey, where I started to learn these really powerful skills that would allow me to sit in the discomfort. Because I think we were
Hmm.
talking in the first episode, what our brain is trying to do is to keep us safe,
Right.
right? So it's that primal survival instinct. And when we move into that place, we're not in our conscious mind. It's a subconscious. So that's why I could get through my day and realize I don't even know how I got here, right? Because a lot
Hmm.
of things, they were just like, I was just surviving, like you were saying, living in
Yeah.
this survival. And then you get to this breaking point in your life and you look back. And for me, at least, it was like, how did I even get here? This is not the life that I wanted. But yet it was the life I was living. And so on that journey of, helping my body to feel safe so that I could actually get deeper into the exploration was so powerful.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm glad that you said that, because I think sometimes we think of ourselves and our minds as being the enemy. And right now I'm in therapy, and particularly internal family systems. and love the fact that we're looking at, like you said, our bodies, our minds are just trying to keep us safe. But a lot of times, it's doing the damage over time. When we look at blood pressure, heart disease, cancer, they're linking it back to these everyday experiences and how we're coping and how our bodies are responding to the everyday stressors.
Oh, well, it's interesting that you bring that up because the World Health Organization has labeled stress the epidemic of the 21st century. Kim and I went through nurse coaching together. We were actually mindfulness coaches for each other. And I was so grateful that she had had a lot more experience with mindfulness than I had. So it was great and really helped me grow in my own journey. So I know Kim can be so helpful to come alongside of you and help you to begin integrating these skills so that you can really increase your capacity to go back to those things. Like Kim said, a lot of these things are tied to our childhood. And so getting your body to a place of safety with yourself is so key to being able to go into those. And it's so nice to have someone next to you that has had their own journey, of navigating these challenges and the hard of their own thoughts, and is now successfully living a very joy-filled life. And so I want you to know that Kim is available. If you want to talk to her, you will be able to find links in this podcast in the notes section so that you can reach out and connect with Kim. You can reach out and connect with me. But one of the fun projects Kim and I are working on with a group of nurse and specialty coaches is a pretty exciting platform that's going to release in 2025 called Ayur Ring. And it is a ring that you wear that helps to notify you of when you're feeling stressed. And what is so powerful about the ring is it picks up on those body signals before you actually begin to notice them. And in that window, I like to call it the window of opportunity, it can interrupt the pattern because it uses conversational AI on your app. It's noticing something's changing and it starts to help you to get curious, which is what we're talking about here. And again, once you've flipped into fight or flight, freeze, fawn responses, it's very difficult to access your curiosity. And so if we can do that in this window of time where your conscious brain is still online, we can help you to really transform your life very quickly. So it's paired with giving you free resources along with other paid resources and even helping to get you connected to a coach that has experience, qualifications, and even their own story with overcoming something that you're going through. So how do you think, Kim, that device could help even kids?
Oh my gosh, I wish we had that device a long time ago. I wish I had that device growing up.
Right?
I think, like you said, there's that window of opportunity. And yes, I feel like we're so used to living in the fight or flight that we don't even recognize when it's happening, and we're not very in tune with our bodies, right? Like, the pit in the stomach, oh, my heart rate's increasing, I'm starting to feel really flushed. And so I think a lot of times by the time my patients or my students, they're already in the fight or flight, and then it takes a while to calm yourself down and to calm the nervous system. So I think if there was, like you said, that tool that said, hey, I'm noticing that your heart rate's increasing, that this is happening, let's take a breath, let's step back for a minute, let's ask to take a moment. I think that it would just be amazing and prevent us from getting to that next step where we say something we don't want to say, or we do something we don't want to do, or we use that coping skill, that's really detrimental. Yeah.
Well, I'm excited
Me too.
for us to be able to offer this to the people that we work with. Stay tuned for more information on that. There will also be a link in the show notes so you can check it out and get your ring reserved. And Kim, tell us a little bit about how you have recently done a few workshops with youth. And so how people could allow you to work with their youth in order to help them to develop some of these skills, but in a really fun way.
Yeah, I recently did a few workshops. It was a lot of fun. We called the program "Who Do You Choose to Be?" Because again, I think we need to remind young people that there's a choice in how we show up every day. And we kind of delved into just self-awareness. I think self-awareness, who am I? What are my values? Am I living in alignment with my values? What are my goals? What do I want to do in the next year? Without putting the pressure. I want to say that I don't want to put more pressure on young people, but we looked at that. We talked about some mindfulness, and then we actually created vision boards, which was our
Love it.
how we culminated the experience, and it was great. I think if we only gave young people more of the opportunity to really reflect on, be self-aware, think about what they want, and really kind of encourage that in them, they're just amazing. They have so
Mm.
much to offer, but I think a lot of times I think we're not taking the time to bring out that goodness, that they have, and really kind of honoring who they are, and helping them envision who they want to be. So yeah.
Well, I know that was one of the things that I was not very successful in when I was raising um, my kids. And it really came back to my own trauma and my own stories. And so the fears and anxiety and trying to protect my kids. So it came from a good heart and a place of wanting them to have the best life they could, to be safe. But the way I was going about it was not delivering the desired result, but I didn't have that self awareness
Hmm.
to be able to understand the root cause. And that's what we're all this season talking about is let's stop looking at the surface of this is anxiety or this and
Hmm.
having this diagnosis, and then that diagnosis leads to one medication or this process. It's kind of that one size fits all. What we're asking people to do is to get curious. Like, if the outcome of what's happening in your life, whether it's the life you're living or your physical health is not where you want it to be, let's dive in. Let's get deeper. Let us help you build skills so that you can do that deep work. Because I know in my own life, I feared going into those deep places because I thought, I won't get out of bed. I won't be able to function. Well, actually, it was the opposite,
Hmm.
and but I needed the support. It was not something that I was able to do by myself. And there were questions I needed to ask myself that I
Hmm.
was not willing to ask. But if someone else was there and supporting me and asking me, I was able to do that work. So
Yeah.
thank you for being here, talking with your journey and how it has brought you to this place where you have developed these tools that not only help yourself, but are helping the people that you work with to have the life they desire. So please, you guys, if there's someone you know that is struggling in this place, would you just share this with them? Because you never know how just
Mhm.
one person sharing their experience could light up something within them to try to do something different and begin with just one simple question like Kim had in her story, and how that had the power to shift her perspective, open doors to transformation. And her journey just shows us how self awareness and intentional practice can change our relationships with ourselves, but also those who we are connecting with. So, thank you so much, Kim, for being here with me today. It's been such a pleasure to have this conversation
Yeah.
with
Thanks,
you.
Megan. Thanks for having me.
If Kim's story inspired you, would you take a moment to reflect on your own thoughts? What is one belief you've been holding that might not be serving you? Start there, and you'll be amazed by what might come from it. Have a
Great
great
advice.
day, and we look forward to seeing you in the next episode.